Welcome to Movie Extra. Today I will show you a horror movie from 2005 titled Hostel. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Enjoy the video. The film begins in Amsterdam. American backpackers Paxton, Josh and Auli meet Alexei, a Russian man who tells them about a Slovak hostel filled with American-loving local women. The backpackers board a train to Slovakia, where they meet a Dutch businessman long enough to be unnerved by his bizarre behavior. Upon arriving in the small village, the backpackers check into the local hostel and find themselves sharing a room with Natalia and Svetlana, two attractive, single women who entice the backpackers to a spa, where the women await without clothes in the sauna. They invite the men to a disco that night and dance and drink with them for a few hours. Josh himself is uneasy about hooking up with either of them since he'd recently gone through a bad breakup. He leaves the club for a few minutes and is suddenly approached by a small group of kids who demand gum and candy. The Dutch businessman appears and gives the kids money and sharply orders them to leave. Josh is grateful and offers to buy him a drink in the club. Later, Natalia and Svetlana take Josh and Paxton back to their room and they get intimate with them. The next morning, Auli seems to be missing. A young Japanese backpacker named Kana reports that her friend Yuki has also disappeared. A picture sent from Yuki's phone shows Yuki and Auli beneath a smokestack of an abandoned factory, with the word sayonara written beneath it. Josh and Paxton have no clue, but Auli has been decapitated and Yuki has been tortured and killed. A strange man took the picture and sent it with Auli's phone. Paxton and Josh decide to leave Bratislava with Kana the following day. They spot a man wearing Auli's jacket walking nearby and follow him to a museum of medieval torture relics. Paxton later notices that in the photo of Auli, the smokestack is faked. Later that night, while partying with Natalia and Svetlana, Paxton and Josh succumb to the effects of alcohol. Josh stumbles back to the hostel and is put in his bed by the female concierge. After a few seconds, an unidentified person enters the room. Paxton passes out in the disco's storage room, confusing it with the men's room. Hours later, Josh wakes up handcuffed to a chair in a dungeon-like room surrounded by power tools and weapons. The Dutch businessman enters in a leather apron and gloves and begins torturing Josh, drilling him just above his nipples and several spots in his thighs, despite Josh's screams of pain and his begging to be let go. After he is done, the Dutch businessman sits down and talks to Josh, explaining his unfulfilled dreams of being a surgeon due to his trembling hands. Josh begs to be released. The businessman then cuts Josh's Achilles tendon. Josh tries to walk and collapses. The businessman lets him crawl towards the door before finally grabbing him, dragging him before a mirror and killing him. Across town, Paxton awakens and returns to the hostel to find both Josh and Kana missing. In his room are a different pair of beautiful women inviting him to a spa, eerily similar to Natalia's and Svetlana's offer from before. When the local police chief proves he is unhelpful, Paxton locates Natalia and Svetlana at a strange bar and demands to be taken to an art show where he thinks his friends are. They drive to a factory on the outskirts of the town. Natalia's behavior has changed from friendly to aloof and unsociable. She mocks him a bit for being an American tourist. She leads him inside and down an eerie hall where, in a dirty cell, Paxton sees the Dutch businessman cutting up Josh's body. Horrified, he berates Natalia, who laughs at him, telling him they pay her to lure tourists to the factory. He is ambushed by thugs who drag him past cells filled with other backpackers. Paxton is taken to his own cell and handcuffed to a chair, joined minutes later by a German client who tortures him, using different tools and then pointing a gun at him to frighten him. Distracted by Paxton's ability to plead for his life in German, the client calls in one of the factory's hulking guards to put a ball gag in Pax's mouth and tries to kill him with a chainsaw, but before he can begin, Paxton starts vomiting. Due to his ball gag, he starts to choke and the client quickly removes the ball gag, probably to stop Paxton from dying because he wants to do it himself. He then approaches Pax again with the chainsaw, but saws off Paxton's ring and pinky finger before slipping on the ball gag which he just threw on the floor. The client drops the chainsaw on his own leg. With his fingers severed, Paxton is able to slip his hand from the cuff, grabs the client's pistol and shoots the man dead. When the guard comes to check on the situation, Paxton, appearing unconscious, shoots and kills the guard. He grabs his fingers, disguises himself with a torturer's apron, and puts on a metal mask before slipping out into the hall. He hides in a nearby room to avoid capture from other guards, where he finds a collection of victims. He hides under a pile of body parts on a cart before he is taken to a room where he sees bodies being chopped up. One of the corpses is Josh's. The butcher also loots the victims for valuables and piles the body parts into a tray to toss them into a large cremation oven. Paxton kills the butcher with a hammer and escapes to the surface, where he then goes outside to see police officers conspiring with the factory men. Paxton slips into a locker room and dresses himself in the clothes of a client, pulling a glove over his mutilated hand, and discovers a business card for Elite Hunting, a worldwide, kill-for-profit organization that charges high rates for Slovakians, Europeans, and most of all for Americans, who carry a fee of $25,000 for the opportunity to torture them. A somewhat crazy American businessman arrives and, believing Paxton to be another client, discusses his intended victim and asks Paxton whether to kill her quickly or slowly. Paxton advises administering a quick death, but the American businessman disagrees and decides to resort to giving her a slow death, leaving behind a no longer needed firearm before exiting. Paxton steals the pistol and escapes to the courtyard when he hears a woman scream. Unable to ignore it, he returns to the factory and kills the American, who is in the middle of mutilating Kana's face and preparing to burn her with a blowtorch. Paxton helps her and they run outside. Paxton and Kana steal a car and head to the railway station, spotting Alexei, Natalia and Svetlana on their way from the original hostel. Paxton vengefully runs them over, killing Svetlana and Alexei. Natalia survives the initial collision but is run over by Pax and Kana's pursuers. Pax sees the gang of kids and notices that he is in the same car that he was driven into the art show, which has a bag of candy in it. The gang then kills the people chasing Paxton, having been bribed with the bag of candy. At the railway station, Kana notices the reflection of her missing eye and her tortured face, and, unable to live with her hideous scars, throws herself into the path of an incoming train, distracting the guards and allowing Paxton to escape onto another train. Once aboard, Paxton hears the familiar voice of Josh's killer, the Dutch businessman. As the train stops in Austria, Paxton follows him to a public restroom and throws the Elite Hunting's card under his stall. When the Dutch businessman reaches down to pick it up, Paxton grabs his hand and, using a scalpel, cuts off the same fingers he lost during his escape. He then breaks into the stall and nearly drowns the Dutch businessman in the toilet bowl, allowing time for him to recognize Paxton, before killing him. Paxton then leaves to board a train out of Austria. The end. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and leave a like if you'd like to see more videos like this.